meetings. Please therefore remember this meeting can be watched anywhere at any time by anyone with access to the internet. There are subtitles available via the YouTube channel, but these are automatically generated by them. The Council is not responsible for these subtitles nor their accuracy. There is a delay between the meeting and the broadcast of approximately 30 seconds. Webcasting officer, please can you confirm the broadcast is now running?
Hi Emma, it's now running.
Thank you. Members, please can I remind you that the chat functions for Councillor Bowers, we're just starting the public broadcast of the meeting. Thank you. Apologies, Chairman. So there's a short delay between the broadcast of the meeting and of the YouTube channel. So good morning and welcome to this meeting of Cabinet, Friday the 31st of July 2020 at 12 midday. Before we commence the proceedings, I can confirm that the Council has adopted some basic etiquette rules for its remote meetings. For ease of reference, these are: please only speak when the Chairman has invited you to do so. Please let the Chairman know that you wish to speak by raising your hand. When asked to vote, please raise your hand. Please minimise all distractions while you are in the meeting and mute your microphone when not speaking. Members may wish to turn off their audio feed to reduce interference on the broadcast. Please bear in mind that there may be a small lag between you speaking and other attendees hearing you. Please quote page numbers or slide numbers when referring to a document. There is no private items for this meeting. However, members are reminded it is their responsibility to make sure their venue and connections is private. If you lose connectivity at any point, please try to rejoin the meeting as soon as possible. If you're unable to return to the meeting, please contact the meeting facilitator by email or on extension 8723. Please only use the chat function for the purpose prescribed for asking to speak or a point of order. The chat function is subject to the access to information regimes of FOI, EIR, but it is also subject to data protection rules, rules of defamation and the Council's Code of Conduct. To assist the managing of this meeting, we will place agenda items on the chat functions as markers. The members of the Cabinet are Councillors Butland, Bebb, Bowers, Cunningham, McKee, Ritchie, Schmidt, Spray and Tattersley. There are all officers in attendance and they have a prefix of officers before their name. There are other members in attendance and these are at the invitation of the Chairman, Councillor Butland, and these are Councillor Mann. Officers in attendance have the prefix of officer. We have two governance officers assisting this meeting, Alison Webb, who will be taking the minutes, and Jessica Mann, who will be reading the public question time statements. And my name is Emma Wisby. I'm the meeting facilitator. Chairman, I will now hand the meeting over to you. You are quora and may proceed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emma. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and also good afternoon to any people who may be watching this on the YouTube. I'll start first of all by just explaining that although on the public agenda, which appears on the website, it says there will be a private session. There is no need for us to have a private session, and so everything will be conducted in this public open meeting of the Cabinet. Item 1, apologies for absence. I have apologies for absence from one member of the Cabinet, Councillor Bebb, and Councillor Abbott and Councillor Mrs Pell have also contacted me to give their apologies today. As members will know, they have a standing invitation to attend. There are no other apologies. Move on to item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest which any member wishes to indicate? If you put your hand up, I've got you all on the screen. I can see it. We don't need any chat thing or anything. I am seeing no hands go up, so no declarations of interest. I should have said that both Councillor Ritchie and Councillor Bowers, who are still working for a living and have other things, have indicated that they will stay with us as long as possible, but they are unlikely to be able to go much past 12:30 or even till 12:30. So I have said, by all means, just leave when your work commitments require it. Okay. Right, minutes of the previous meeting to approve as a correct record the minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of July. They have been circulated. Are members of Cabinet happy that they are a true record and that eventually I will personally sign them? I see hands up from all members, correct? Thank you very much. Move on now to public question time. I believe we have a member of the public, Mr. Miller, I think, who has a statement. He's indicated he would like it read, and Jessica Mann is going to read that statement for us. I believe that the member of the public is watching, in which case, welcome, and we will listen to your statement now. So can I pass over to Jessica Mann to please read the statement? Jessica.
Thank you, Councillor Butland. I will now start with the statement. My wife and I paid up front as annual members of Fusion in December 2019. We have been members for many years. With COVID-19, the centres closed in March, and we were informed after chasing that our memberships would be extended for however long they remained closed. We have had virtually no correspondence or updates from Fusion, other than last week saying they were preparing to reopen following the government update and said we would hear more shortly. They did not open on 25th of July, and to date we have heard nothing of the plans to do so. My question is, why are they asking for and receiving large sums of money to support them, but seemingly not doing all they can do to generate well-needed revenue? Spending our money on a poorly managed operation is a waste. The cleaning and hygiene before COVID was very poor. This virus has just exposed their very weak operation. The roof has been leaking for over a year, with buckets on the stairs to catch the drips all the time. How is it that Abbeycroft leisure centres are already open back from 27th of July and have kept their customers fully informed? I do not want Fusion to fail, but see handing them large sums of money as totally the wrong thing to do. Far better management would serve us all better. Do not throw good money after bad without being really clear on what this will genuinely achieve. Who is holding them accountable once the money is awarded? My understanding is that they have already had 167,000 for April, May and June. What have they done with this money? What will they spend the next 484,000 on over the coming months? The staff are furloughed, so the government are paying for them. Why are they not ready to reopen? They have had 4 months to prepare and make the necessary changes. Surely it should be an absolute priority to get open again and give the best offer and service possible to maximise their turnover. Thank you, Councillor Butland. That is the end of the statement.
Thank you, Jessica, for reading that statement. To Mr. Miller, could I just say we won't answer it direct at this moment, because I think all the issues that you raise will probably be picked up, hopefully will be picked up in the discussion which we're now to have. And we will also write to you to confirm anything that might need to be, following this meeting, might need to be given to you in writing. But I hope that you will, in the course of this debate, feel that those questions that you have raised are being dealt with. So without more ado, I will go on to the one main agenda item, which is the paper you have before you, colleagues, Fusion Remobilisation Support, August 2020 to March 2021. And I will ask Councillor Peter Tattersley, as the Cabinet Member for Health and Wellbeing, to introduce the paper. Councillor Tattersley.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm grateful to Mr. and Mrs. Miller for those questions, because they do actually reflect the type of questions that I've received an awful, and I'm sure other members have, an awful lot of. Some of them not quite as eloquent or as polite, I have to say, as this question that you've made. And I do think that most of the questions will be answered as we progress through the report. Mr. Chairman, I've got questions that were raised at the council meeting by other councillors. Do you want me to deal with those now or later?
Sorry, I think
Butland, your microphone switched off.
If you deal with them in the course of your presentation, that will be fine, Councillor Tattersley.
Okay, thanks. We have had a lot of comments from members of the public and the council about the extent of the financial support that's been requested by Fusion, and the apparent delay in the site's reopening once government authority has been given. And I have to say, for the most part, this has not been the fault of Fusion. And perhaps I didn't make the position as clear as I could have in my report to last Monday's council meeting. And I think I'd like to do that again. But before I start with that, I want to just mention that without the enthusiastic support of Fusion, we would not have been able to implement many of our health and well-being initiatives. And I've got a number of them, and they are quite substantial. And I think that without a partner that's happy to engage with the council and provide benefit to the community, these would never have got off the floor. We've got the Sport for Confidence programme for those living with a disability, whether that's mental or physical. We've got walking football, which I know is hugely popular for the over 55s. We've got the seated exercise programme for the elderly and the less able. And we've got the Girls Like Us initiative, targeted primarily at women and teenage girls. And there are many, many more. Fusion, the Fusion Company, is a charitable, non-profit making organisation. And when leisure centres and pools were ordered to close, they had absolutely no ongoing income to fund the considerable costs of mothballing the centres. Again, the charitable nature of their business meant that they didn't have any significant unallocated balances to draw on to fund the mothballing costs. So inevitably, they asked the council to help with these costs, as well as seeking government aid. This is not just a problem with Fusion, it's a national issue. The Daily Mail this morning reports that a third of all centres remain closed and are looking for specific government aid before they are able to open. Now, we received the government guidance about the conditions under which the centres could open on the 9th of July. And once these were received, we were able to start planning what actions were needed in our own centres. And the report gives an awful lot of detail about what that expenditure was up to the point of possible reopening. And once we were aware about what the guidance was, we were able to start the process of those opening. These costs are quite significant, and clearly Fusion, without any ongoing income, was not able to commit resources that they didn't have. The sorts of examples I've got is the pool heating, the staffing costs. Somebody mentioned about as staff are furloughed, and the government paying for them, why weren't they doing this work? Well, of course they can't, because the very nature of being furloughed means that they're not at work. Had they come to work, they would have had to be paid, and Fusion didn't have any money to pay them. So that was a real issue about getting the centres organised and ready. But so we got the staffing costs, we've got the cleaning. It's a big tank of water in those, and closed up, the atmosphere gets very humid, you get mould and bacterial growth in there. The ventilation needs to be on at some stage, but nowhere near to the extent that it would be if the pool was open and operating properly. And then we've got the refiguration of the gym equipment, the swimming lane to ensure social distancing, and so on. The costs, once the centres are opened, are estimated to be up to £700,000. A huge sum, I fully accept, but this is a pessimistic sum. It's hugely dependent on the footfall that we get when the centres open, and what financial support, which we've not heard about yet, is likely to come from the government. And towards the end of this presentation, I'll ask Joe Bihun to give you examples of the footfall and the usage of the centres in those that have actually opened. Now, the council wasn't able to authorise this £700,000 without the approval of the full council. It's beyond the delegated authority that any officer or individual members have got. And the first available date that we had to go to the council meeting after the lockdown was lifted was the 27th of July. And you can understand that Fusion wouldn't want to commit an awful lot of resources that they may not get approved until it was confirmed by the council on the 27th of July. So again, it just adds a little bit of explanation about the length of time that it's taken. And Mr. Chairman, normally before a report of the kind that went to the council, asking for the money, the Cabinet would have scrutinised the proposals, looked at the alternative scenarios, sought advice from other councils, what they're doing in similar positions, identified the risks and considered the value of maintaining public facilities of this kind for the health and well-being of the community. So today is the last stage in that, and we've been able to give a lot of detail in the report about the timetable and the conditions that we'll be applying to get the centres opened. Now, Councillor Bebb, the Cabinet Member for Finance and Performance, would normally give the financial details, alternatives and risks, and the monitoring systems that we'll put in place to make sure that the public money is spent prudently and effectively. But in his absence, we've produced what I believe is a very clear, comprehensive report. A lot of them embodied into the recommendations that we'll be making. It also gives a schedule for the reopening of the various activities. There is one additional recommendation that I'd like to make at 8, with your permission, Chairman, and that is Fusion agree a clear communication plan for the reopening arrangements with the corporate director responsible for leisure facilities and myself. Mr. Chairman, the recommendations are listed in your report at C1 to 8, and I move the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Tattersley. I now open it to all members. Let me just go to gallery view so I can see everyone. I now open it to members. I see David Mann, top left-hand corner there. David, would you like to go first? You need to unmute.
Thank you, Chair. 3 questions, come observations, if I may, Chair. In the report, quite rightly, there's a strong risk identified. Other local authorities that have contacts with Fusion may decide not to provide funding to Fusion, impacting on the viability of Fusion as an organisation. Now, what's the state of play on this? Are all the other councils on board that have Fusion provision for this sort of rescue package? That's question number 1. Question 2, the LGA believe that the way forward is central government funding and very much support the bid that's been made. Has there been any informal indications through the usual channels about how request for funding from central government is likely to be received? And a third question, observation, perhaps catamounts and pigeons. Is it time in the medium term that we looked again, as we have with so many functions, taking back in-house?
Thank you, Councillor Mann. I think that last question, if you don't mind, I'm going to park at the moment. I think today really is about what we do, but I hear what you say on that. On the other 2, Councillor Tattersley, either you or one of your officers, the position about other councils, I think if we can get a response for that. And the second one, where we are in terms of the national approach to MHCLG, because clearly we are not the only authority that is in this position. So over to you, Councillor Tattersley.
Yeah, thank you. The funding from the local government is a bit complex because lots of leisure centres are not provided by or funded by local authorities in many ways, and the leisure industry as a general have been asking for government support, and I think the government's trying to work out whether they should give it to the private sector or whether the support for ones in local authority control are actually funded through the ongoing grants that we tended to be getting to allow us to overcome the COVID-19 problem. But the commercial manager, James Sinclair, has been in very close contact with other authorities, and if he's able, I think he might be able to give you some really up-to-date information about the latest discussions that he's been having.
I'm very happy. James, would you like to come in, please?
Thank you, Councillor Butland. So from discussions with our consultants and with partners, we understand that a bid was made by the MHCLG and the Department for Culture, Media and Sport to the Treasury for financial support for the leisure industry. We hope to hear in the next couple of weeks whether that bid was successful. If that bid was successful, then the council will have the opportunity to bid for funding to help offset the costs, both for the relief provided during lockdown and also through the remobilisation costs. On the other point regarding the interaction with other local authorities who also use Fusion, we have set up a Fusion customer group which represents 15 Fusion customers, and we are having very regular contact with those groups. They are all going through their own governance routes and discussions with Fusion, but we seem to be broadly in line with those authorities.
Thank you, James. Are you okay with that, Councillor Mann?
I would say, Chair, that's less than a ringing endorsement. I would have hoped for full support from all other authorities. I mean, there is the danger of us putting money into Fusion and others declining to do so it collapses anyway.
Yes, I mean, clearly each authority has its own sovereignty, if I can put it that way. But I know that James is closely in touch with other officers as across the country, if I can put it that way. Okay, now, do I have any other questions at all? Councillor Mrs. Schmidt, and I've got Councillor Spray. So, Councillor Mrs. Schmidt.
Thank you, Chairman. Could I have some idea of what work is taking place at the moment? As I'm sure that, you know, with so much equipment, that there'll have to be a great deal of alteration going on in the centres.
I think that's a good question. It probably addresses the issue about, you know, why aren't we open tomorrow and what have been going on. Councillor Tattersley.
Well, I'm happy to provide that as my understanding, but I know that Joby Humm has actually been visiting the centres and seen firsthand about the extent of the work that's going on, and he might be able to give a clearer picture than myself, I think.
Okay, Councillor Cousy. Joby, would you like to tell us what you've been doing and inform us of what you think the position is, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, Fusion have supplied me with a full mobilisation plan, which addresses the 26 pages of guidance that was given by the government on the 9th of July, as Councillor Tattersley referred to earlier. This is to ensure the safe operation of indoor and outdoor leisure facilities. In addition to this, both UK Active and Swim England, who are the national governing bodies within the industry, have also produced additional guidance on the safe return to exercise in both gyms and pools. Fusion are also required to conform to this. This would include items such as lane swimming only for adults and a very significantly reduced use of changing areas and elements like that. As Councillor Tattersley referred to, I have been out monitoring our sites as they start to implement these plans. There's been some moving of some very large pieces of gym equipment, treadmills, etc., so that they are into socially distant spaces, both within the gyms and other open area spaces within the building that they can configure equipment into. Pool timetables have been adjusted with sufficient sanitisation and cleaning gaps so that they can keep a flow of customers coming in on pre-booked appointment times. There's a lot of work around IT and getting booking systems into place so that everything is booked from a gym session to a swim to a class. Along with this, they're also ensuring that all statutory health and safety legislation is met, one-way systems are put in place, and disinfection of systems for Legionella, etc., where the sites have been closed during lockdown. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Humm. Mr. Miller mentioned in his comments about a bucket and water. Do you know whether that has been dealt with, or are you aware of it?
Unfortunately, from Mr. Miller's question, I'm not aware of which site it was referring to directly. but there could well be an issue within one of the site's changing rooms with a small leak within the water systems.
Could I ask Mr. Hum? I think we've got a contact point from Mr. Miller. Could you follow this meeting, contact Mr. Miller and just establish where it is, so that as you're going around, we can see whether we can pick up that point as well? I think that would be helpful.
Absolutely, Chairman, no problem.
Thank you very much.
Just on that one, I think I might know a bit more than Joby about that one. I don't think it's a leak from the roof, as in a missing tile or anything that might happen to your house. It is likely to be from the heating and ventilation system and condensation, but we will check on that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tattersley. Then I went to Councillor Mrs. Spray, and then I've got Councillor McKee.
Thank you, Councillor Butland. Councillor Tattersley, wearing a different hat to my district councillor one, I have got personal experience of the quite devastating financial impact that COVID is having on charitable organisations. And I know you mentioned this in your report just now, but do you think we have made it sufficiently clear to the public, and especially to Fusion customers, that they are a non-for-profit organisation? You know, unlike some other big organisations, and I'm not minimising the effect for anybody, by the way, but Fusion are not sitting on a pile of money to see them through. So do you think we've made that sufficiently clear? It may be a message that perhaps we need to get out to people, that, you know, charities are struggling. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Tattersley.
I hope that we have, but clearly we haven't, because an awful lot of the comments, including those from Mr. Miller, are around the communication and the issues about why we're not opening and why we're putting all this money in and why the centres have opened or not. And I wanted, with your permission, to add, as I mentioned, an extra recommendation to the end of the report, to the end of the recommendations at, bear with me, at E, which in effect would read that Fusion agree a clear communication plan of the opening arrangements with the corporate director with responsibility for leisure facilities and myself, and that would include making it clear about why there's been a delay in opening and how we intend communicating the various opening schedules that we've identified in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Tattersley. Councillor McKee, and then I think Councillor Cunningham wants to come in. Councillor McKee.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to be clear, I shall be supporting this proposal wholeheartedly. However, picking up a bit of what David Mann said at the end of his question, and in the report at 3.3, it says that we only anticipate this going back to 60%. I understand that could be an under estimate, or it could be an overestimate. Can we be assured and make sure that we are doing all the work we can to look at the other options, work them up into some, I don't mean business case, but some detail on what would happen if there was another lockdown, which is looking potentially possible in the district, that we know what those options look like and how difficult they'll be to implement. Thank you, Chair.
Just before you answer, I think, just in case people, there is no indication that this district is due for another lockdown. I think the point that Councillor McKee was saying is, we've seen what has happened to Greater Manchester today. I don't want anyone going away from this meeting thinking, my goodness me, is Braintree going to happen tomorrow? We have no indication of that. But the point that Councillor McKee does make is, if we are into a national situation later in the month, what the plans would be. So, Councillor Tattersley.
Yes, it's very difficult, isn't it? I mentioned in my report that went to council, there are a number of options that are available to us. All of them, we believe, are likely to be much more expensive than the option that we're going down. Don't forget, if we were a council-run and managed leisure centre, the costs that we're supporting Fusion with would already have been met within our own budgets. We wouldn't have furloughed staff, because we wouldn't be furloughing local authority staff as far as I'm aware. We would have been able to keep the centres without them going mouldy, if you know what I mean, and all the other things that we have to look after. So that the cost would have been similar. I'm not saying that they'd be identical, but the cost would be similar if it was a local authority run organisation. And of course, the staffing costs, if it were local authorities, would be far higher than the ones that Fusion, whether it's pension contributions, overall salaries, performance-related pay, and all the other bits and pieces. But it is a bit of guesswork. I agree with you. And the options that we have looked at are closing one or more of the centres, going out to another provider, although which other provider would be happy to take on a contract running leisure centres with all the fuss that's happening nationwide, or bringing the service back in-house. And bringing the service back in-house would mean that we'd have to set on a couple of hundred more employees because they work shifts and all that. So the cost would be quite significant. But they are being looked at and they are being scheduled. And we could provide at a later date, as we get to know what the footfall is for the leisure centres and whether there's any government funding likely to be forthcoming for us, we could actually put together a schedule of the alternatives. That wouldn't be a big issue, I don't think, would it, James?
Thank you, Councillor Tattersley. I think your answer shows that there's no easy solution to this, whatever happens. But I'm reassured that we are actively looking at that. That's fine. Councillor Cunningham.
Sorry, did Mr. Sinclair want to respond to that, Chairman? Or?
Oh, sorry, Mr. Sinclair, did you want to say something?
Just to echo Councillor Tattersley's point, yes, we will be looking at, and we are looking at all the options available, and we will provide a update in due course to Councillor Tattersley.
Thank you. Councillor Cunningham, would you mind if I went to Councillor Ritchie, because I know he may have to get
By all
away.
means, Chairman.
So Councillor Ritchie, and then I'll come to you, Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Chairman, and thanks for giving me Councillor Cunningham. I appreciate it. Just to add, I will be giving my support to this motion. The provision to give the option for all of our communities to access affordable gym and swim, I think is absolutely vital across the whole of our district to all people, irrespective of affordability. So I absolutely need to support this to enable some limited functionality to be given to the provision that we have via Fusion. One question I was going to ask the Cabinet member is, I noted that you were going to add an item number 8, or I think an additional recommendation about communications to the council with Fusion. I know that a number of email correspondences has been around lack of communication to members and paid up membership. Would we also be able to do something there to enable those leading on the reopening communicate that plan in a positive manner to paid up members? It only needs to be done via email, so at no cost. But I just think it's fair that paid up members should and have the right to know when they'll be able to use these facilities again across the district. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Councillor Tattersley.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point. And the fact, by adding that to the recommendation, which implies that they don't get the funding if they don't comply with all the recommendations, of course, means that we can offer the support of our own excellent communications team, who I think are far better at this type of communication than other organisations. I'm trying not to name them, than other organisations might be. So I'm confident that we can start to provide that. But just to come to the defence of Fusion, Fusion really didn't know whether they were going to be getting any financial support from the council until after Monday's council meeting. And it would have been a big risk, as they see it, to start to bring back staff to write press releases and give information that might never materialise. So I do have some sympathy with them. But having said that, it has been a real source of dissatisfaction across the people that use those gyms.
Thank you, Councillor Tattersley. Is that okay, Councillor Ritchie? I think you've got the assurance there that you were seeking. Right, Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Mann actually asked the question I would like to have asked about the grants from central government. So that point's been dealt with. Obviously, welcome the whole package of proposals, but particularly the recommendations around item C, the checks and balances for assessing the information and the requirement of information from Fusion. Could I just ask either Councillor Tattersall or officers just to give perhaps a flavour in terms of the frequency in which that information may be provided or indeed asked to ensure that constant monitoring of the situation is in place?
Councillor Tattersall.
Yeah, well, of course, the monitoring will be from the date that we start to hand over the money, but the detailed arrangements, I think, with your permission, Mr. Sinclair could probably give an oversight into that.
Mr. Sinclair?
Thank you, Chairman. We will be working with our consultants, KKP, to review in detail the financial requirements going forward ahead of the first payment that's set out in the paper, and we will continue to review those ahead of each further payment. So we will have a clear understanding of Fusion's delivery against the projections that they've put forward into that report, and that income levels are keeping pace with those projections, or where they are above those projections, that the funding that we're providing reflects the change in those projections.
Councillor Tattersall.
Yes, Councillor Bebb said that he would start to include this information in his performance monitoring report when it goes to both Cabinet and to Council in the next cycles.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to make the point that, and I'm grateful for the answer from the officer, that it's not a case of if the information or the phone call doesn't come in or the email doesn't come in from Fusion, these questions aren't being asked. So I just wanted to clarify that wasn't the case, of course.
Absolutely, Councillor Cunningham. We will be keeping a very, very close eye on this, and as I say, working with the leisure experts that we have in place, KKP, to assess each of those elements set out into that report. We will not just be paying without ensuring all conditions are met.
Okay, any other? Looking around, I'm not seeing any other hands up. I've got one point out, Councillor Tattersall. If you could just remind me, just before lockdown, I think there would have been some increases as part of the annual review of fees under the CPI. What's the position now with those? Do they now? I mean, clearly they haven't been charged because there's been no one using the facilities. But am I right in assuming that they will be charged, but it's not as a result of COVID? It would have happened anyway as part of the normal agreement. Is that right?
It is. I agreed to the increased charges just before the lockdown, and with one thing and another, that they never got introduced, clearly, because we went into lockdown and nobody was using the leisure centres. The increases that I agreed were in accordance with the Consumer Prices Index, and I think it adds the odd pound or so to an adult swim. It's not significant, but they will be introduced clearly once the centres start to reopen.
I think in any communication, we should make that point quite clear, that this is part of the normal situation, if you like. Each year we do review it, and not as if this is a charge which is it's nothing to do with COVID and nothing to do with the close down. But again, I think it would help preempt any questions along that, if that could be included, if you wouldn't mind, please. Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands up from members. We have before us on page 2 of your paper the recommendations there, A to D. Councillor Tattersall has moved them with the exception, not the exception, but with the addition of 8 to little c, that Fusion agree to a communication plan and to be agreed with us as a council. That's a shorthand version of the actual wording, but I've heard quite a bit of support for that to go in as well. So I will, in that case, ask if members of the Cabinet are in agreement with the recommendations. Given that we are not in a room, could I please ask you to indicate by raising your hand if you are in favour? I am seeing hands up from, yes, everyone who is here. Councillor Bowers, we know, has left, but Councillor McKee, Schmidt, Tattersley, Cunningham, Spray, Ritchie and myself have voted in favour of those recommendations. Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Councillor Tattersley, and also the officers, particularly, I don't mean to say particularly, well, I do mean to say particularly the officers, because they have had to engage in a lot of additional work. They have had to engage in a lot of additional work, and I'm most grateful for that being done. The real, I say the real business, we want now to be able to open the facilities safely, and we want to be able to get our local residents in. It's not an ideal situation anyway, but we're not in an ideal world at the moment. But clearly, as part of getting people back to being able to exercise and to swim and that sort of thing, it's very important that we do get them open. So thank you, and to officers for the work that they've been doing in getting that done. Okay, that then I think takes us on to the other items on the agenda, which if I had before me, I would do it. Probably any other business, is it? It's gone off my iPad screen. It's also gone off the Chief Executive's iPad screen because he's looking as bemused as I am.
Chairman, there are no further
Thank
business
you, Emma.
items
Come to
for
our
your agenda.
rescue.
Thank you.
That's the end of the agenda, is it?
It is. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Thank you to members of Cabinet for the meeting at this rather unusual hour of the day for us. Thank you to members of the public who may have watched. I hope that people will have felt that the questions they've been asking are also questions that colleagues around the table have been asking as well, and that they have received a response to it. And we will now move forward for the main purpose of getting these facilities open in a phased and safe way. So without any more ado, I will declare this meeting closed at 12:40, I reckon. And thank you very much for your participation. And I'll hand back to you now, Emma, to safely guide us out the door.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Before I ask the webcaster to terminate this broadcast, I'd urge members to complete the short survey that we'll be emailing you later on this afternoon. This is very important to help us improve our meetings. I'd also like to remind you that the Council retain performance data relating to your connections to this meeting. This is held in the event of a legal challenge to the way that we are holding virtual meetings. Thank you very much for attending Cabinet this morning, and thank you for your attendance on behalf of the Chairman. Webcasting officer, please can you confirm the broadcast has now ceased?